Morning, folks. Eric Carlson here. Again, I'm running for Congress in the 1st Congressional District in Illinois. Um, just got done shoveling snow. I know we got hammered last night and early this morning in the 1st District, so be careful out there. If you can, get some kids to shovel your driveways. If you have any medical issues, don't be out there shoveling. It's not worth risking your health over. I want to talk about something. There's a briefing going on right now, a Pentagon briefing, and in regards to Ukraine and Russia. And this affects all of us. I know a lot of people tend to focus on what's right in front of them in their own neighborhood, but this literally affects not only ourselves and our lives, but the entire world going forward. So I'd like to talk about it. This is not one of my solutions and problems videos. This is just an updated version. So this will be kind of short. About Ukraine and Russia, U.S. has already announced days ago that we're going to have 8,500 more troops. We have about 35,000 in Europe currently that are stationed there permanently. We put 8,500 more on alert, and they just announced today that they're adding 3,000 more in addition to that. The problem with that is it's a drop in the bucket, and I'll skip down here to the 3-to-1 rule. In the military, we use a 3-to-1 rule. And that rule states that ideally what you want, if you're going to attack a defended position, i.e. the Russians attacking Ukraine, you want a 3-to-1 advantage in troops to succeed in your attack. The bare minimum would be a 2-to-1. But ideally 3-to-1 or better is ideal. Currently, the Russians have about 125,000 troops. They're adding more to the Russian military is not that big. Their population is about half the size of the United States. Since the fall of the Soviet Union. So their army is not that big. This would be a commitment of just about the entire Russian military to attack Ukraine. Now, Ukraine roughly has the same amount of troops as the Russians do to defend itself, which means right now your 3-to-1 rule is out the window. Doesn't exist for the Russians. Also, you saw the Russians, they had the same problem we had in Afghanistan fighting a guerrilla war. We were much more successful at it. The Russians never quite got it down. We had, technology on our side, and we had some really good troops that were doing it. They tried to fight it with conscripts and couldn't get it done. The Russians are going to get bloody because the Ukrainians will fight. They're fighting for their homeland. This is a large country, a country of over 40 million people, and they are going to fight a guerrilla war. And they also have places to fall back into across the border. It's going to be just like a Vietnam type situation or Afghanistan type situation for the Russians, except they're going to be up against better trained and better fighting troops. Not the third world rock farmers that you get in Afghanistan. These troops actually have been, a lot of them, the older guys were part of, they've had military training under the Warsaw Pact, and it's not going to be easy for the Russians. They're going to get bloody, which is one of the, excuse me, one of the reasons that I don't think this is just a show by Putin. He's pushing the buttons to see how far he can go, and the Chinese are watching this to see, what will the West take, what will the West give. NATO doesn't want to, the Europeans are wishy-washy about stuff, and weakness gets this. This is how you get the Second World War. Weakness on the part of the Europeans, and the U.S. just not being prepared. And the leadership, that lack thereof, that we have right now at the top of the Pentagon, Joint Chiefs of Staff with Milley, these guys are not capable of handling this problem. And they've lost, there was a survey out last night, poll that less than 40% of the current members of the military have faith in their leadership. That is disastrous. I cannot emphasize enough, and this is directly because what you have at the highest levels of the Pentagon is a bunch of politicians wearing uniforms. That's it. These are not the best people for the job, and I'll do a separate video on that. The Russians can't win this as things stand by going in there. They're going to get bloody. They're going to get bogged down. If the U.S. does issue all these sanctions that we're talking about and everything, the Russians are going to cripple themselves, which is another reason I think this is a lot of bluster on Putin's part. He's shaking this rusty saber, rattling it just like the North Koreans always do, trying to get the world to pay attention to him like he's still relevant. The only thing about the Russians is, of course, their nuclear capability. And as goofy as Putin is, I don't think he's that goofy. So let me give you some solutions here. If you wanted to call Putin's bluff right now, what you would do, NATO would immediately admit Ukraine into NATO. Immediately, right there, then they're covered. If Russia invades, then Russia is going to war with all of NATO. So you nip that in the bud. You call his. Nobody is invading Russia. Nobody wants to invade Russia. That's not why Ukraine is trying to get into NATO. They're trying to do it for economic reasons and defense reasons, and they don't want to fall under a proto-communist regime like they had to spend over a century, under the Russian boot heel. So you have NATO needs to step up and just say, you know what, now they're boom, now you can move NATO troops in there. If you didn't want to do that, if you didn't want to go that far, we had special forces advisors working with the Ukrainians. Joe Biden pulled them out. You should have left them there. Those are your canaries in the coal mine. You told Vladimir Putin, hey, listen, we have a working relationship with the Ukrainians. Our troops are going to stay there. If an American is killed or wounded, we are going to war with you, flat out. If you fire, American troops are there. If an American troop, American soldier becomes a casualty, game on. Call his bluff. Call his bluff. Lend-Lease. This is something we did in World War I and World War II. Giving weapons and just pumping all kinds of lethal weapons into Ukraine in order for them to make it bloody as possible on the Russians. These would be Javelin anti-tank missiles, all kinds of mines, everything that would slow the Russians down and make it just a bloody mess for them. You give all that stuff, and it's basically on credit, so the Ukrainians don't have to come up with the money right now. This is going to save you in the long run. A lot of people think, why are we spending money over there? You piss away money on a lot worse things, believe me. AVG, the American Volunteer Group. I don't know if you guys are familiar with in World War II, before the U.S. was in, American volunteer pilots, which were all U.S. military pilots that gave up their commissions, went over, they joined what was called the American Volunteer Group. These are also known as the Flying Tigers. These are guys who flew. We sent P-40 fighter planes and supply planes and things like that, mechanics. We sent them over to China to fight the Japanese at the time. We were not at war with the Japanese, but Americans were actually fighting against the Japanese. You could do that now. With the Lend-Lease Act, you could say, okay, we are giving 60 A-10 attack planes to the Ukraine, and anybody who wants to volunteer, we're allowing Americans to go over there and volunteer. So basically, you would take American units almost as a whole, because I'm sure a whole bunch of guys would volunteer for this. They would go ahead and they would move over to an Eastern European country and be able to fly in support of the Russians. Now, A-10s, they will absolutely shred this Russian armor that everybody's worried about. You also have to send air defense artillery units to protect our airfields, and also you want air superiority fighters too that would be involved in this to combat air patrol above to keep Soviet aircraft out of Russian. Trained my whole life, fighting the Soviets and everything. So this isn't a new problem, folks. This isn't the first time we've dealt with this. You could do this right here, and the Russians would complain about it and tell them, go screw yourself. This is it. You want to play games? We'll play games too. Call the bluff, folks. Call the bluff, because this weakness begets. Joe Biden and Barack Obama already gave up the Crimea in Ukraine. It's if you do not nip this in the bud now, it grows and metastasizes with the Russians and the Chinese working together and the Iranians. You have no idea what this leads to. If you think it can't happen, just look at history. We're not that far removed from the Second World War. This was exactly what went on. Hitler took a little bit, and he took a little bit. He took Czechoslovakia, and then he took the Sudetenland, and and then he made the non-aggression pact with Stalin. Same thing that the Russians just did with the Chinese. Hey, don't attack us. We're gonna mess with these guys too. That allowed Hitler to go into Poland, and then because he had a non-aggression pact, then he could turn around and go after the Low Countries and into France. All about living space. Well, the Chinese are expanding with their 3-child policy now, replacing their 1-child policy, and they're eyeing Taiwan. And the Chinese and the Russians don't see this, and I don't know how they don't. That the Chinese, what they're looking to do is eventually let the Russians burn themselves out and use the West up until the West doesn't want to fight anymore, and they're tired and they're sick of war and everything. You see that now with the American people after dragging out idiots in the Pentagon, the same guys you have running shit now, kept us in a war for 20 years, and just the American people were just like, you know, we're sick of this, we're done with it. That's what the enemy wants. They want the American people to tell the father, we don't want to go to war anymore. But weakness begets worse war. You're only making it worse, folks. Peace through strength. It works. You know, it collapsed the Soviet Union under Ronald Reagan. The fact that the people that we have in charge right now and in Congress have no idea. The seat that I'm running for, the 1st Congressional District, the people running for it are not versed in this stuff. And you have to not only be versed in what's going on locally and how to fix those problems and have actual real life logical solutions, common sense solutions, but you have to know what's going on in the world. You have to know world history. You have to know how people act in certain situations. Here's your options right here. This is not the time to be a shrinking violet and give them the opening that they want, because it's going to show the rest of the world U.S. weakness, which is going to open the door to a lot of them, to China moving in, and gradually our sphere of influence is going to shrink. And if you don't think that that means anything to your life, you don't know how the world works. So that's all I've got for now. Again, my name is Eric Carlson. I'm running for Congress in the 1st Congressional District of Illinois. I'd like to go there. I'm not a professional politician, never run for anything before in my life. I want to go there because I think I have the best head for the job, and I think I can represent the people of this district better than any of the possible candidates that are currently in the race. Thank you.